All right, that was weird. Zoom just kind of restarted. So
Hmm.
anyway, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm a host on Archery Talk 101, and we're talking with Dalton about his archery escapades, and we'll get started here in a second. I just want to let everybody know where you can watch or listen to the podcast. The podcast is going to be at normal places where you listen to your podcasts, as well as on Audible. Spotify is where I upload them to, and they send them out to other places. And you can watch the video if you want to see us on the Facebook group Archer Talk 101. That's a good place to do that. There's also good information for archers if you have any questions or anything. There's a big group of people that have some experience, as well as you can go out to my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself, and you can watch the video there as well. So, welcome to the show, Dalton.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, how about if you introduce yourself and let us know a little something about you?
I'm Dalton Hammerstad. I've been shooting archery since I was 5, so I got probably close to 28 years, I guess. Well, close to, not quite, but been shooting since I was 5, hunting since I was 12. Um, I kind of got out of archery for a little bit in high school, and then I got back into the 3D side of things after high school, and really took off from there. But always bow hunted through high school, so I never completely gave it up. Just the tournament side of things.
Yeah, that seems to be a kind of a common theme. You start in archery when you're younger, and then you get a little bit older, and then things kind of interrupted a little bit, family and stuff, and then get back into it, and it's something that we can always go back to.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I never thought I'd be where I am now. I mean, as far as shooting in the pro class, and doing what I'm doing now. It was always just kind of a hobby for us. And then my dad and I started an archery shop in, I want to say it was the end of 2018. And that was kind of a part-time gig for us. We both worked full time, and then I jumped in full time 2 years ago, running the bow shop and building bowstrings.
Where's your shop at?
We're in southern Wisconsin. We're right in between Delavan and Whitewater, Wisconsin.
Okay, what's the name of your shop?
It's Dat's Archery, and then the
Okay.
bowstrings are Dat's Custom Bowstrings.
Okay. Yeah, what for those who want to get a hold of you, we'll put a link in the description, but how's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
I would say Facebook, usually Facebook or Instagram. The shop's Instagram is kind of funny, so usually Facebook's a little easier. It's just Dad's Archery Outdoors on Facebook, and then Dad's Custom Bowstrings on Facebook as well.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put a link in there so they can get a hold of you, especially if they live in the area. Stop
Yeah.
by and see and chat, because I know you're willing to help new archers out, or even medium or experienced archers that
Oh,
get the right
absolutely.
equipment. That's always um, the challenge and the fun part of having a shop is
Yeah.
taking those new archers and getting them into it and getting them involved. Um, without mentioning names, tell us about some of the archers that have come in with some struggles that you've helped them overcome.
Oof. Um. And that's a hard one to kind of single them out. I mean, I kind of deal with a bunch of different ones, day to day, but um, a lot of them I would say are, fairly novice hunters that come in that just kind of the basic setup that we all started with. Maybe the draw length isn't right, or the arrows aren't cut to the right length, and we're a little trigger happy. Um, so just helping with form and stuff like that, and grip placement. A lot of form issues, I guess I would say. Um, I had a guy out on the range just the other day, actually, and he was just shooting a hinge release, just getting into it, and just asking for some simple pointers because he just couldn't seem hold his groups tight. And I gave him just a couple little tricks with the hinge and how to apply pressure and how to keep pressure on the bow arm, and one shot and he was in awe. So it's always nice when it's something simple, or at least I consider it something simple, but it's kind of a breakthrough for them, and you just kind of see them, with that aha moment.
Yeah, that's what I always liked about, teaching. I've been an archery instructor since '95, so I've seen lots of problems, and
Yeah.
like you were mentioning, it's the novice shooter, the beginning shooter that doesn't know what they're doing. They don't know what
Yep.
they don't know, and you know if the archer is open for suggestions, we can make them a better archer.
And that's the key, is that you have to be open.
I've seen that a lot where they're not open, and I don't even bother with them.
Yep. Yep.
If you're not open to get better, then stay where you're at.
Yep. Yeah, that's where it gets a little tricky.
And even experienced archers, you know, uh,
Yes.
archers have coaches.
Yep.
Even a coach is going to have a coach.
Yep.
Because how do you get better if you don't have somebody to look at what you're doing? Because it's real hard to take a video of yourself and coach yourself.
Right.
Um, at times you can say, that's not what I say to do. I'm not doing it. And then you have to change and do it. But, there's very few that can actually look at the videos of themselves and say, oh, I'm doing that wrong.
Yep.
You have to be able to step back and look at them as if it's not you shooting. And, they've come a long way from, doing them live where there is no recording. We had VCR tapes, when I started.
Yep.
In fact, I've got a course. I took mine NFAA course, and I don't know for those you can see it's NFA Shooter School. This happens to be volume 6, a 6 volume set that goes over a whole bunch of stuff. But that was what we had was VCRs, and how many, you know, you got a big old setup to do something. So we're coaching somebody by watching what they're doing as they're shooting live. There is no replay. And
Right.
now, the power in the phones are just crazy how much power you have in them. Uh,
Oh, absolutely.
and you can do slow motion videos in them. You can do wide angles. You can, then you can play them back. You can in a lot of programs I use DaVinci Resolve when I do my YouTube videos, and I can hit the arrow key and go one frame at a time.
Yep.
I can look at all kinds of stuff, so I can look at the videos and do so much more. When I first started, there was no online coaching
Right.
because, well, one, the internet wasn't really that good at the time. Um, like I remember when the internet first come out, it's like, oh, well, okay, well, we can play games online,
Yep.
text-based games.
Yep.
Now it's gone, way further than that. And my first online student was in Italy.
Oh, wow.
He had no coach around that he could talk with. And so, I told him, I'm thinking about putting together an online coach. I want to see how it works. So I coached him for free just to see how it was going to work. And,
Sure.
he'd record a video and play it back, and I'd play it, give him suggestions, go back, and he's improving, and it's just all, you know, I'm in Nebraska and he's in Italy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty amazing what we can do now. I linked up with a physical therapist that's about 3.5 hours north of me. Because I was dealing with some shoulder injuries, stuff with my bow, and um, he was kind of looking at doing something similar, an online training kind of thing. And we started talking about it, and he kind of did the same thing. He actually helped me out, um, for free to just try to do it over the phone and online. And um, yeah, that was tremendous. I mean, it really worked out. But it was super easy to do with what we have now.
Yeah, and then like now we're on a Zoom call, and we could watch you live and of course record it, go back and play it later, but we could watch live. And the second guy did, that's what we did, is on a Zoom call. And I spent
Yeah.
about 45 minutes with him, and, went from probably about a, 5, 6 inch group to 3 arrows touching.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, he shows me, he sends a picture of 3 arrows touching. And I spent
Yeah.
45 minutes with him on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
part of that was also getting all set up to actually do it. It wasn't 45 minutes of watching him shoot. It's probably only about 20.
sure.
The
Right.
rest was set up, getting the video set up and getting the place set up for the shoot. And,
Yeah.
we spent a lot of the time just set up. And, that's always nice when you can do that. And, I'm sure you have a lot of stories of different guys that have, and ladies that have come in and, and seen that. It's like you said, uh, the, the real thing is when you see that light bulb go off,
Yeah. And that,
and,
yeah.
and, and they just get it from then.
Yep. And that's really, I mean, I love seeing that, and I really look for that, because it makes me feel good too, to see somebody else enjoy the sport, and know that they're going to enjoy it now that they understand it a little bit better and they can shoot a little bit better, and I use my phone a lot, with the slow-mo stuff and taking videos, and because if they're having trouble understanding what I'm trying to tell them, then I can video it, and then I can walk them through and show them exactly what I see in their form that needs to be changed, and it just seems to speed up the process a little bit.
Yeah, it does. It really helps if you can go back and show them, so, okay, this is what you did, and this is what you're supposed to be doing. And I spent 20 plus years in martial arts. And I take a lot of that because I did Hapkido, which is a lot of um, you know force going through different directions, and how the body works. And I incorporate that in my archery as well, because it's a lot of things are similar. And
Yeah.
one of the things I'll start off with is I'll ask a new archer, "You had any martial arts training?" And if they say yes, and I say, "Okay, we're going to grip the bow and you're going to put the pressure like a heel palm strike." And they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Somebody don't have martial arts, they have no clue what it is. So those of
Right.
you
Right.
listening that haven't listened to the other ones when I've explained it, um, they don't know what it is. And basically, it's the part between your thumb and your little finger on the meaty part way down where it meets your wrist. As you
Yep.
turn your hand back, that little spot right back there is where you're going to push from. And that's your most efficient way to push. You're going to push on that, and the arm should extend straight to your target. And if it doesn't, then something's off.
Yep. Yeah.
So
That's a good way to explain it.
yeah, but if they don't have the martial arts experience, then I have to go through and explain a little bit more and show them. And one of the things you do is you can push on that spot, and as you have your arm out, push it, hold arm out, and I push on it, you feel it clear back to the shoulder. But if I push on the thumb, you only feel it in the wrist,
Yep.
maybe on the shoulder, but you can feel, because the hand moves, you can't consistently, when your hand's moving side to side, you can't consistently do that, and you're not transferring as much power. I tell them, on setting up your bow, you probably go through and use the levels and stuff like that, and lasers for setting up the arrows. Um, you know, I've been doing it that way for decades.
Yeah.
But I tell them, it's like, you want that to be square,
Yeah.
and center, and if the center shot design right, which all the new ones are, you want that to be center shot. You want it to be at a right angle. And I says, well, take a pencil and put it on the table and push from the eraser to the tip and go straight. Now turn your hand slightly off to the side and push. And all of a sudden the pencil starts turning around. And that's how you want your arrow set up. A
Yep.
few little tricks that you go through. And once you explain it, then it's like, oh, okay. Now how do you do
Yep.
that? That's
Yep.
where our expertise as techs come in, and we set them up. And so when you're setting up a bow for a beginner, um, what type of bow are you recommending, and how are you basically setting it up?
I mean, we're an elite dealer, only, we don't carry any other lines. So we're looking more maybe in that like Ember Basin lineup there, maybe sometimes in like a terrain, somewhere in that, that budget area. Um, a basic setup, just making sure that their arrows are spined right. Maybe a whisker biscuit, maybe a drop away. I guess it just kind of depends on where they're at, and if they're just starting into it, I would just set them up with a basic 3-pin sight, a whisker biscuit. Get the bow tuned close, and then really just work on form is the big one for me. I don't want to get too far into the setup before I get their form correct, because then we're going to just be setting it up to strip it apart and then reset it up.
Right.
So I try to allot some time with those people, just to try to, make sure that the bow and everything is fitting properly before we make our final setup.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do. Is like first thing is you find out whether right or left eye dominant. Of course, whether you which hand of bow to put it in. But then after that, we're gonna get the draw length and find out what the draw length is to make sure we have that set. And then, I'll take them around. When I had my store, I was mostly PSE for compounds. In fact, that's pretty much exclusively what I was. I did have some Brownings and a couple of Archery Research, which is PSE owned all of them. But for my recurve longbows, those were ordered in from Martin Archery. But I would take them around, and even when I worked at Bass Pro and Cabela's, they had multiple different lines. I'd take them around as all that was in the range. I said, put it in your hand. How's that feel? How's this one feel? How's this one feel? And there's like, oh, that feels pretty good. Okay, let's go set that one up and shoot it. And then it's
Yep.
like, okay, let's come back and grab another one. How's that feel? Yeah, I like this one too. Go set up and shoot it. Then determine which one you like
Yeah.
better.
Yep.
And
And
brand
that's
didn't matter. I sold
right.
more non-PSEs than I had PSE, and I'm fond of PSE bows. Yeah,
Right. Right.
I got a recurve and two compounds. They're all PSE,
Yep.
and all my kids shoot PSE. So, but I didn't push PSE when I was at those other two stores because there was a lot of other options,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
sometimes a different bow actually made more sense for them. And that's
Yep.
what I always told them is what makes sense for them, not what I
Yeah.
wanted to shoot, because I
Yep.
didn't matter to me because I'm not shooting it.
Right. Yep. No, the most important part is it has to fit them right. And that's what I tell guys too. I mean, I don't know if I should say it, but I mean, we're a pretty small time shop, but like I said, we only carry elite, so I tell them, I mean, if there's something that, if it feels off, or, if something doesn't feel right, go try some other brands and see how they fit. Um, and see, you might find something that just stings to you that you like better. But for the most part, we really haven't had any guys kind of teeter away. I mean, most guys can find something in the elite lineup that really fits them. Um, but there's a few that don't.
Yeah, and I actually brought up the Elite website, so you can kind of go over that. And if you want, we can just kind of talk about the bows that you have.
Sure.
Okay, you should be able to see the um, website, right?
Yep.
Okay, let's go down here and then kind of talk about these three different bows, and there's no prices in here. If you want to get into, roughly prices, estimated prices, you can as if you want, but
Yeah, I mean, MSRP on those three bows is right around 13, like 1250 to 1300. The Kairos is going to be more for the shorter draw archer. Um, but you're still getting that really good performance. That bow is kind of built for the shorter draw archer to kind of get more towards the back end of the cam to get a little bit more of that performance out of it. The Allure was their more towards like a woman's flagship bow. So you get like the set technology and all the bells and whistles, but in a lower poundage and shorter draw system. That one's been a lot of the ladies really like that bow. It's a very smooth shooting bow. The Ethos has been a big seller this year. And the Kairos and the Ethos are in that 33 axle to axle. But the SP cam on the Ethos really makes that string angle a lot taller. So it's a lot more like shooting a 35-inch bow.
Oh yeah.
And it just sits great in the hand. Very smooth shooting bow and just sits on target really nice.
So let's go down to the next ones here.
Yep. So the Omnia was last year's flagship. I hunted with that bow last year. Fast, smooth shooting. That's I believe that's a 32-inch axle to axle.
Don't say here, so
Yeah, that one that was a very good bow. I really enjoyed shooting that one. It pretty comparable in my opinion to the Ethos, but the Ethos definitely sits on target a little bit better than the Omnia, I would say. The Era is their carbon bow that they launched last year. For the carbon guys out there, I think that one's around a 31-inch axle to axle. I could be slightly off on those numbers on the Omnia and the Era, but and that one was a real light, real smooth shooting bow too. I mean, really, all of them shoot extremely smooth. I guess that's where they get their saying, take the shootability challenge.
yeah.
And that Era, I believe MSRP on that Era is right around 1,800. The Omnia was right around 1,200. And the terrain is an extremely adjustable, more geared like that grow with you style. You can get it in a 45 to 60 pound range or a 50, I believe it's a 55 to 70. And a long range of draw length options on that one. We sell a lot of those. The MSRP right around, I think they're around 750 now. So for the guys that don't want to spend over $1,000 on the bare bow and they don't really feel the need to buy something that has the set technology, that one's a real hot seller.
See what else they have here. Oh, they got intermediate and beginner type bows, hunting bows. Well,
Yep.
let's just take a look at what they have for hunting bows. Since I'm mostly a hunter, but
Sure. And then that Flex that was right there at the top, that's the new recurve that just launched not too long
okay.
ago. We actually just got one into the shop, I want to say about a week and a half ago, and I was kind of tinkering around with that. And that thing, all I did is kind of did a rough setup and used the arrows out of my other recurve and just tied a knock set 5/8 of an inch high. And I was grouping arrows at 15 yards. I mean, we were wadding them in there pretty tight. Everything almost in the 10 ring on a Vegas target at 15 yards.
Well, that's pretty good for just setting it up.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed.
And here's the same bows we already talked about.
Yep.
Here's some pricing on them. Now, it looks like they have, here's a package already put together.
Yep.
The ready to shoot packages. Let's go ahead and talk about some of these. What's the features of either one of these?
I'm just trying to read. Is that middle one basin?
Yeah, the basin.
Yep. So the basin is actually that's a bow that my son shoots. So that one, I want to say the poundage range on that one is somewhere around 18 or 20 pounds, all the way up to 70 pounds. And I want to say, maybe 18. I forget what the bottom end of the draw length is. It's pretty short, but it'll go all the way up to, I believe, 30. So extremely adjustable bow. Um,
Yeah.
and they come with a great package. I mean, the packages are, I think, an extra $100. It comes with a whisker biscuit, a 3-pin sight, Tactic 5 quiver, and a 6-inch stabilizer. Um, so I want to say that's right around 700 for the package. Um, but an amazing bow for a beginning archer. It fits just about anybody, and super easy to use.
Well, and that's, beginners don't want to spend $1,800 just on the bow and still have to outfit it.
Right,
And I always like for beginning archers to pick the ready to shoot packages, just because it gives them everything. They don't have to think about it. Later they can upgrade to something that they want, and most
right,
a beginning archer is not going to shoot more than what 3 pins will give them anyway.
right,
A
right.
20, 30, 40, or a 15, 20, 25, depending on the weight you're using.
Yep,
And, beginners shouldn't be taking those longer shots anyway, because they don't have the skill to take those longer shots and start off with this and go from there. And the Ember is a little bit cheaper.
yep,
Um, what's the difference on
yep.
that one?
The range isn't quite as great on that one. It's a little bit shorter range on that one. I believe that one's a little bit shorter axle to axle. I don't know the exact measurements on those. We've only sold a couple of those. That one, if you're looking at especially like smaller girls, um, that's a great fit because it's a lot lighter. Um, so they don't have to hold up as much mass weight either, and the range goes down a little bit further on the poundage, I believe too.
So they have a couple of nice packages
Yeah,
for the beginner. That's
yeah.
always nice to have that. Let's see if we can go back. Intermediate and beginners. Let's see what we have here. The
No, and that's
terrain, the
gonna.
base and amber, the same basic ones.
Yep,
Yeah. Okay, we already talked about all those. So yeah, that's I just wanted to get through and things how you're a dealer. I wanted to kind of talk over them because I I don't know too much about Elite because I'm kind of out of it a little bit. I'm not working at a shop anymore, and I like
sure.
to learn about the different bows and uh, a lot of times we'll get into anywhere now. The bows nowadays, there's really not much difference in them as far as quality.
No.
There, if you're getting any of the bows out nowadays, the quality is going to be there. Uh, you just matter of okay, how's it feel in your hand? How do you like the way it shoots?
Yep.
And go around and try them. And I've never told somebody you can't shoot that many bows. And like, you know, I'm there 8 hours or whatever I'm going to be there. It's like, I don't care how many bows you shoot. Now, if we
Yeah.
have a line of 20 people waiting, then, you know, they're just going to have to wait,
Right. Right.
because I'm going to spend whatever time I need with each person. And when I get to you, I'm going to spend whatever time I need. I'm not going to rush you because there's a bunch of people waiting.
Right.
And we've had guys come in, and when I was working over at Bass Pro, there was um, John and Jim and Steve and myself. There was four of us there. That we had between the four of us, we probably had almost 75 years or better experience in archery because we'd all been in it for a while.
Sure.
And we'd have guys come in. And it's like, no, I want John to work on my bow. It's like, and there's one or two of us standing around not helping anybody. No, I want John. Okay, we don't care. And then
Yep.
others that come in, it's like, what? Right, this is your customer. Okay, so then wait for me. And a lot of archers, they get to know attack and they trust what they're doing. And
Yeah.
I had one follow me from when I had my store. So when I went to Bass Pro after I closed my store, um, they come in and it's time to me because I knew exactly what he wanted, what he needed,
Yep.
How to fix his problems, and every new bow was always a challenge getting set up for him, and I knew how to do it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And once
Yeah,
that relationship's built, they just feel a lot more comfortable, going to the same person if they can.
yeah. And one of my staff shooters behind my store is like him or I, the only ones that could touch his bow. He wouldn't let nobody else touch it.
Yep.
And then, you know, back then, this is, 24 years ago, when I had my store, uh, the bows strings that were on the PSE bows, the white and black ones, were terrible.
Yep.
They would never stop moving. I don't know what they use, but it would never stop moving. And one of my shooters is like got his new bow in, had to make him new strings because he wouldn't even do anything until I had new strings on it. Because
Yep.
I made my own strings. I learned how
Yeah.
to do that, and they're probably not as fancy or as you know. It took me a while to figure out how to keep the colors where they would still stayed the same.
Oh,
Because I
sure.
made a continuous loop.
Okay.
So I didn't need, and I tied, do multiple colors. I've got a knot tying the two colors together as well as the end. So when I stretch mine on the jig, I'm putting pressure on it and I'm evening out the pressure. If you
Okay.
don't, like some of them, they don't actually tie them together. Well, now after you make them, you got to stretch them to put all
Yep.
that stretch back in there. Well, I stretch mine as mine's one continuous strand, so
Okay.
that I don't have to worry about stretching because I've already put some pretty good pressure on it, just in making them,
Yep.
so they're all even because, I tried, tying them each individually, and that didn't work because if I didn't get them the exact same length, one stretch is tighter than the other one. And, so I did one that way and didn't like results. So I threw it away and started over.
Yep.
But it don't take long. And when I had my store, I custom made, all my strings. I had some in the store that was left when I bought it. I think 99.9% of them I still had when I closed the store because I didn't fit anybody's bows.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it's like they ordered them in, the stock on a place. Like, no, just make the strings. It takes you less than an hour to make a string,
Right.
and so just custom make them. Pick your colors.
Yep.
Then guys come in and say, I want black. Is your bow all black and our accessory black? No. Well, you can't have black. I'm like, that's too boring. Pick some other colors.
Yep.
Pick a couple of different colors. What are your favorite colors? And then
Yep.
same thing for arrows. I fletched. I didn't buy any pre-made arrows. That you'd pick whether you want 3 or 4 inch vanes. Back then, they didn't have the really short ones,
Right.
and then 4 or 5 inch feathers. The
Yep.
5 inch feathers, most of the traditional archers would use those. Uh,
Yep.
I still use 4 inch feathers. I just never switched from when I started using feathers in the 60s.
Yeah. Yeah. We've
So
got plenty of them around here that are still fletched up with 4-inch feathers. I
yeah,
think more so just because we like the way they look.
oh yeah, that's true. And I have shot arrows with feathers on them that have chunks missing out of them,
Yep.
and they still fly straight.
Yep.
You can't do that with a vane.
Nope. Nope. It's amazing what you can get away with a feather.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. But I've also had to deal with, rainy conditions too.
Yep.
But there's ways around that too.
Oh yeah. We used to use I believe it was boning feather dry.
Yeah.
And put it in a baggie and just kind of fluff it up on the feathers. And I actually have an arrow that I had shot a bear with up in Canada, and the arrow, it was a clean pass through, and the feathers look brand new. I mean, it doesn't look like anything ever happened to them. They're just still standing straight up.
It repelled the blood as it went through.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So tell us about that bear hunt. That sounds interesting.
So that was a trip that my dad and I took. I want to say I was just 18. We went up to Ontario, Canada on a week-long fishing and bear hunting trip. And we went up and they told us the fishing was low. so we didn't know really what to expect. That was our first trip up there. And I think the first day we caught, I don't know, somewhere around 40, 45 walleye. And we came back and they asked how it was. And they said, well, we caught, 40, 45. And oh yeah, we really sorry about that. It's been really slow. And I said, well, I don't know if my arm could take any more of that. you know, but
That's a
yeah,
slow day.
right, right. And so no, it was great. I mean, we got to go out fishing for a few hours and then come back, eat lunch, and then we go spend about 4 or 5 hours in the stand. Um, and I was truly amazed at how stealthy a black bear is. That was my first encounter, and when mine came in, we were in a ladder stand hunting over bait, and I was, I think, 15 feet in a tree, and the bait barrel was about 15 yards ish. And yeah, he came in, and I stood up, and it, even before I stood up, he seemed to know I was there. Like they just know. And he just kept looking up, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to pull off the shot. And he would take something out of the bait barrel and he'd run off into the bush, and then he would come back and then he would take a peek at me. And I waited till the one time he stuffed his head in there, and I was able to draw back and let one rip. But um, yeah, that was something different. It was a different type of adrenaline rush. I can say that.
Yeah.
Um, I whitetail hunting, it took me a few years to get my first deer with a bow. But it seems after I broke the ice, then it kind of came natural. But so I kind of got used to that adrenaline rush with a whitetail, and we get up in the stand with a bear coming in, and it was a different type of rush. That's for sure. But I was able to tag out, I believe, on a Tuesday afternoon, and then my dad tagged out on a Thursday. So we both got our bears and got a day of fishing afterwards.
Well, that sounds pretty good. Did
Yeah.
you eat the bear meat, or
Oh
was
yeah.
it the
Yep.
locals, or?
Yeah. So actually, I've never, and I don't eat heart usually. But they had made the heart out of my bear that first night, and brought it into the cabin, and we all ate it, and it was actually really, really good. The bear meat that kind of got mixed reviews on it. Some of it was kind of pungent tasting, but the more I talked to people, it sounded like it was more or less because we left them sit overnight. Because he only ran, I think, about 40, 50 yards, but there was a real thick section of bush that he ran through, and then he had died in a clearing on the other side. But it was dark out when we were going through there, and the guide just didn't want to push through in the dark. So we backed out, and we found him first thing the next morning. But most people that I talked to said that it probably would have tasted a little different if we would have recovered right away.
No, it's like pretty much any animal. If the
Right,
longer you let them sit, once they're dead, the more that's going to change the flavor of the meat.
right, right. And it was plenty cool. It wasn't like it got warm and spoiled or anything. It was just, we had to just make it a little bit different. But by the time we seasoned it and stuff, I mean, it tasted really good.
That's good, because you kind of hear the other stories of bear meat being terrible to eat,
Yeah.
and I just want to see what your thought was, because you shot the bear and your dad shot a bear, and what was the meat like, and
Yeah. I mean, that was our case. I mean, I have had bear meat that was recovered right away, and it was delicious. I mean, it is very good meat.
so that kind of leads to the quicker you find it, the quicker you get it cleaned,
Yep.
the better meat you're going to have.
Yep.
Yeah, that's so. Tell us about some of the other hunts that you've been on. Maybe something that's um, memorable. Other than this was a pretty good story here, but
Yeah, that was and I mean, I'm sure I didn't, I mean, probably doesn't sound quite as exciting as what I felt it was, but no, it was a very memorable hunt. It was something that my dad and I got to enjoy, just the two of us for a full week. And Just a great experience all around. Um, I think the only other out of state hunt that I did or that I have done yet is we went to Wyoming 2 years ago for antelope. That was a totally different change of pace there. We were just doing public land spot and stalk, and that proved to be quite the challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine they have really good eyesight.
Oh yeah, yeah, and the does are really what would get us. The bucks they weren't rutting yet, but they just seemed to be not all there. I had white wraps with all white fletchings on my arrows, and I had a 6 arrow quiver. And I had heard people talk about like the white rags and stuff, and hold them up above your head or a white t-shirt, and they just seemed to be attracted to it. And I said, well, what the heck? I'm going to try it. And I flipped my bow upside down with all my fletchings in front of my face. And sure enough, I mean, I had a buck I think he was at 170 yards, and I was walking at him and he was walking at me. And
Oh,
I got him to 100 yards, and I was setting my sight kind of upside down, and I had an arrow knocked. But as soon as I'd flip the bow over to try to draw on him, then he would run right back out to that 150, 170 yards. And we played that game for quite a while before he finally ran off. But that was just kind of cool to kind of play with it that way. But um, yeah, we had I couldn't even tell you how many blown stalks that we were stalking quite a ways in, and you get real close and something would happen. The wind would switch, or a doe would come out from around a sage bush and peg you. And yeah, there was plenty of blown stalks there. But a buddy of mine and we both ended up sitting on water holes that were about a mile apart, and we both had either sex tags, and I shot a doe, he shot a buck, uh, both over a water hole. I think I shot mine at 85 yards. Um, and that just 60 seemed to be a close shot out there. But we were both able to harvest and uh, and get it done. I think it was on our third day.
yeah, to get a good enough shot at 85 yards on an animal that size to get a good kill shot is, that's going to take some practice. What was your
Oh,
practice like to get ready for those long shots like that?
I want to say I was practicing pretty consistent around 100, 120, a couple at 130. And really just to practice at that longer distance to make the closer stuff seem that much closer.
Yeah, I know when I at the indoor range, I'd start at 20 and then 30 and then 40. And then it's like go back to 20. It's like, okay, I'm wrecking too many arrows. I got to start shooting multiple spots. It's
Yep.
amazing when you shoot them longer ranges, how tight your groups get at the closer ranges.
Yeah. Yep. And usually, like if I go to a tournament or, even just shooting around the house or at the shop, I'll try to start at like 50 yards, 50, 60 yards and just kind of get, maybe an end or two at 60, 50. And then I'll work back into the closer stuff just to, you know, seems to help with my hold and stuff too. That and 60 and 50 yards, anything around that is going to really point out any flaws that you've got going on.
Oh yeah, it's at that longer range, any mistake you make can be exaggerated really, really good. Because if you're off by,
Right.
a millimeter at the close range, by the time you get out there, it's a long ways off.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I tell guys, they're like, well, everything was fine at 20, but as I started to back up and started sighting in my 30 and 40, this started to happen. And or even making a sight tape, I made a sight tape and I sighted in at 20 yards and 60 yards, but my tape doesn't match up. Well, you can get away with a lot at 20 yards. And that's why I
Right.
tell guys, if you're going to be sighting in at 20 and 60 to make your sight tape, that 20-yard group better be extremely tight.
Yeah, you better be putting them in the center of the X ring,
Yep.
hitting the X in the X ring,
Yep.
because then any little mistake, and then too, that how straight are your arrows?
Right.
It's like, are you shooting the comp pros or the 1000 straightness? If you're
Yep.
not, you're not going to group.
Right.
Just flat out impossible.
Right. Yeah. And there, I mean, well, without cutting down and really, kind of spining the arrow yourself, or, cutting it down to get that true straightness out of it.
Yeah, and on carbon arrows, that's kind of tough to do because anything you use to see if it's straight is going to affect how it is straight anyway.
Right. Right.
They use lasers to test them, and how you gonna do it? If you put them on a wheel and spin them, that might
Yep.
be okay, but you don't know. You can't spin them in the middle. You'd have to spin them only over the wheels, and depends on what pressure you put on one or the other. They do flex.
Yep.
They're pretty tough.
Right. Well, and I tell guys too, it's, by your average bow hunter nowadays, I would say by the time you get done setting up a bow, I mean, you're, right around that $2,000 mark, maybe a little over, with a full setup. And it's, well, if you've already spent, 2,000, what's another, 190 or 200 to make
Right.
sure that you get the right arrow to, do the job, that let the equipment do what it's, meant to do.
Yeah, and I generally would start the beginners with one of the ready to shoot packages.
Yeah.
And when I had my store, I actually included a half dozen arrows,
Yep.
and one of the cheap releases. But I always tell, if you want to make your best improvement, get a good quality release first.
Yeah.
Spend the money on a release. The cheap $20-$30 ones they function. That's
Right.
about all I can say for them.
Yep. But that
They're
release, you spend the money on it, and that release is going to go with you from bow to bow to bow.
right.
Yeah.
I've got one release that I bought in the late 90s from a guy who was a rep for Scott Archery.
Hmm.
I still have it. It's what I use during the winter when it gets cold.
Yeah.
Because when it gets cold, I can't use my handheld because I got to feel the release, and I'm
Right.
not putting uh, a freezing cold piece of aluminum in my hand and try and draw and hold for any amount of time because my hand is already froze. So I use
Yep.
that because I just need my index fingers out of the glove because I pretty
Yep.
much don't have much of a glove with a handheld one, just because I can't have much on there because I can't feel the release. It puts a release in a different spot. I can't feel the trigger. I don't. I took the knob off on them because you don't actually pull a thumb release with your thumb.
Right.
That you shouldn't be using your thumb to pull it. Then it's just worse than the trigger. The index ones for your wrist
Right.
wraps, because your thumb has less dexterity, less control over the index finger. So you're
Yep.
going from a bad habit to a worse habit.
Yep.
So that's why I have multiple releases, and that release is, like I said, it's probably 30 years old and it still works perfectly fine.
Yep.
And I have a Carter chocolate addiction that I've had for about, yeah, probably about 20 years now, and it
Yeah.
works just fine.
Yep.
I've got some other ones that, yeah, don't work.
Yep.
I just told this story a couple of times. I had a release. It was a trigger one, wrist strap one, and I'm down at the indoor range and I'm shooting, and all of a sudden I'm about halfway back, and also because I always put my finger behind the trigger, so I know I didn't pull the trigger. All of a sudden the bow goes off. Up goes the arrow into the ductwork, and I'm shooting double X 78s, 25 12s. So it's a big old fat shafted arrow, and it goes in the ductwork, and I look at my release and the head's missing off the release. It broke.
Yep.
And we found it about 20 yards down range. Um, and the name of this release was perfectly fitting. It was called Failsafe.
Mm.
Was the name of the release.
Yep.
And put fail in there, and it failed. And we got this, we knew why, because when they machined the little knob that it rotated around, it was so thin, there was almost no thickness of aluminum,
Yeah.
and maybe a 64th of an inch at most.
Oh,
or
wow.
maybe even less. And it just broke. So a machinist friend of mine machined a new one. So I still got the release, but it sits in there and I won't even
Yeah.
use it. And I had two of them.
Yeah.
The other one never did really work very good. So
No.
that's the difference between buying a cheap one and an expensive one.
Oh,
When
absolutely.
when I was helping out with the Nebraska has some becoming an outdoor woman, and I was helping. They teach ladies archery, and I was down there teaching one, and we could not use it correctly by putting it use your back tension because the travel on it was so far that there's no way you could pull it. So you had to basically pull the trigger because it's the only
Yep.
way to go off. Not a release you want to try and teach somebody how to shoot with because she had to just pull the trigger because there's no way we could do any kind of a back tension type release because you'd have to, okay, how much we pulling, we pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling, and then you could
Yep.
finally pull. But you can't do that with these cheap ones. So, like,
No.
you know what? I can't with that release. I can't teach it to you, and I only had one of my releases theirs that could use because I wasn't going to give a new archer a handheld.
Right.
That's
Right.
asking to get smacked in the mouth.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's like the first thing I recommend probably use like upgrade to a good quality release. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of them, you know. We talk about Scott, we talk about Carter. True Ball has some really good ones. I actually interviewed one of the owners of True Ball, and you know I didn't really know too much about it, but it's like I learned a lot about you know
Yeah.
their upper end releases. They got some low end ones,
Yep.
that you know spend the money.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you're not spending close to $100 on a release, you're not getting a good enough release.
Yep.
Spend the money
Yeah.
in there.
And they've got quite a few really good ones that are right around that $120 price range, and that's what, yeah, I'm the same way. I tell guys, spend the money, buy once, cry once. You might
Right,
sell the bow, you might sell the next bow, but the one thing that's going to go with you bow to bow is that release.
right,
And I won't say what brand it was, but the only time I had ever experienced the dry fire myself was because of a release failure. And it was actually right before our bear hunt. I had bought a new jacket and I just wanted to make sure, it was a fairly puffy jacket. And I wanted to make sure that I was, I had good clearance and that the string wasn't going to slap the sleeve and all
right.
that. And like a dummy, I didn't load an arrow. I just drew the bow back and I got to about 3/4 draw and that jaw opened up and it derailed the bow and cracked a limb. And it was a nightmare. So for the listeners, I don't care if you're in the house aiming at a wall or whatever, just wanting to practice draw, put an arrow in. You know,
Yes.
that a patch and a hole in the drywall is a heck of a lot easier and cheaper than replacing a bow.
Yeah. You know, I've seen it too, you know, when they'll draw and even if they do have an arrow on when they let that because they got that death grip on the bow.
Yeah. Oh,
And when you have a death grip on the bow, it actually torques the bow to the side.
yep.
They'll draw back and they'll have that death grip and they'll start letting down and they derail it off the rails because
Yep.
they've turned it at an angle.
Yeah.
So it's that's why it's very important. You don't hang on to a bow. That's why you put
No.
slings on them.
Yep. But I think that death grip kind of gets associated with maybe being a little overbowed sometimes. Maybe drawing a little bit too much poundage than you should, for what you're comfortable with, and you feel like you got to put the death grip on the riser to get it back, or to even hold it at full draw.
Yeah, and that actually makes it worse because now as you have that, we learn at martial arts too. You know, if you have a tight fist, you can't move your hand. It's kind of locked. So as you
Yep.
open that hand up, you can move,
Yeah.
and that's the same thing on holding that bow. You have more control without hanging on to it than you do if you have the death grip.
Yep.
Um, eh, if I in a tree stand and I shoot, don't have my sling on, my bow falls to the ground.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't hang on to it.
Yeah.
That's what the sling is there for. I can't drop
Yep.
it if I have a sling on it.
Right.
And
Right.
I almost dropped a bow one time. I was shooting a bow. I think this is when I was at Bass Pro, and it didn't have a sling on it. And I shot, and it's like it hit my fingers, and it's like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I had to hurry up and grab it because it jumped. The older bows with the long limbs, straight
Yeah.
up,
Yep.
they jump forward quite a bit.
Right.
With these new ones, they kind of sit, the more the parallel limbs, because the force is going up and down instead of forward. So they don't
Right.
have as much forward, force.
Yep.
And, I'm so used to shooting with a sling. And I've talked to others that normally shoot with a sling and don't hang onto their bow. And it's like, same story. Almost dropped the bow because no sling on it.
Yep. Yeah. I've seen that at an indoor range. We were shooting I believe it was a spot tournament, like a 3D, or not a 3D, a Vegas style tournament at, just 20 yards. And yeah, he normally shoots with a sling. Well, for that one shot, he didn't put his wrist in the sling, and that bow dropped about 2 feet in front of him. And
Oh,
it was a fully loaded target rig. That's a lot of money hitting the ground.
yeah. Yeah. A lot of money just for that one. It's a one shot. Yeah.
Yep.
No, that's like I always use a sling and then adjusting the sling. You want it loose on your wrist. I've seen some of it so tight it's pushing their hand down.
Yep.
It's like and just barely slide it in, and you don't want them you don't want them that tight because it
No,
shouldn't be pulling on it. The only time it should hit your wrist is when after you shoot.
you're right. Yep.
So what has been back to some of your hunting stuff because I always like hear those stories. What's
Yeah.
been your most challenging hunt you've been on?
Um, I kind of want to say that antelope hunt, just because I think it was something so different from what I'm used to. Um, I mean, I've had plenty of challenging hunts, nothing that's really popping out as far as like whitetail hunting. Um, other than just kind of learning as I go. But I would say the most challenging as far as getting it done was probably that antelope hunt. Just because everything was so new and it was our first time, being out west and getting used to the terrain and everything, and then just understanding the animal behavior and how they're going to react to certain things. Um, yeah, I mean, I've had plenty of challenging whitetail hunts, but like I said, nothing that's really popping up in my head. But
That would be a challenge to get them in and they run out, and get them in and run out, and then they're not
yeah,
close enough for a shot. You get ready to take your shot, and then they run off.
right. Or you're, belly crawling for 100 yards through the grass, because you don't have a whole lot of cover and you're just trying to get close. And you can do everything right, it seems, and then right there at the last minute, something happens to where they just blow out of there. It's it can get quite frustrating, but persistence pays off.
Well, it makes for a good story.
Right, right.
Yeah, how long would the story be if you did it? They flag it, they come running in, you turn and you shot it, and it's like, okay, story
Right,
done.
right, right. Yeah, that
Sometimes
was
the best stories, the ones where we don't actually kill anything.
right, right. Yeah, we had a pretty good story out of it, but I took my son, he just turned 11 now, so he was 10 at the time, and we took him out for the first time for our youth hunt last fall. It was right around the beginning of October, and I forgot about the youth hunt, and I was just planning to bow hunt, and I already had my tree stand that I was going to sit in picked out because the wind was going to be good for it. And he reminded me that week, "Hey, Dad, can we buy my tag and go on the youth hunt this weekend?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, we can do that." Well, I wanted to hunt the same area, and we got out there, about 15 minutes before light, and I want to say it was about 45 minutes after light. He had a buck walk in at about 150 yards, and he was using a 243, and it never happens like this, to anybody that I talk to. But I mean, this buck came out, and it's a mid 150 class buck. I mean, it's a big deer,
Yeah.
and he missed the first shot, well, it went right over his back. Well, the wind was in our favor so much that the deer actually looked the other way because he must have heard the bullet whipping through the beans behind him or on the other side of him. So he thought the danger was actually coming from the other side of him. So I had told my son, all right, load another round and shoot him. And missed again.
Oh,
Well, now the deer runs to us because now he, again, he thinks that danger's on the other side, and he ended up shooting him at 80 yards. And it was awesome because we had 3 generations. My dad was out there, and I was hunting with him, and so we had 3 generations there, and so it was just a very cool moment, for everybody to be there. And I thought he was going to be done. I figured, you know what, this kid just shot, a world-class deer for most people, it within the first hour of light on his first hunt. And that night he says, hey, can we go back out in the morning? I still have 2 doe tags. And I said, okay. So we went out the next morning and, set up in the same spot it was an alfalfa strip right off the woods. And then it was surrounded by bean field. And that hayfield was loaded with does. And we were there about 20 minutes before light. And I said, okay, we're just going to sit still. We're going to wait. In about 2 minutes till shooting time, there was a doe in the field that started blowing. And I thought she was going to clear the field. And there was, I think 10 that stayed. And he shot once, dropped the first one. And I said, well, load another one. And, because none of them moved. And so right there at first light was able to tag out, his other 2 doe tags. And we were all in awe that, he just came out and, less than an hour and a half of hunting, had filled 3 tags.
yeah.
That was, it was a pretty cool moment. But and then we were able to get my grandfather out there too, and he shot a buck for the first time in 15 years, I believe. And so we had 4 generations, that gun season last year out in that woods that it all tagged out.
Yeah, that was quite the story. It's like when you get out there and you see them, and I actually had that happen one time with my bow. I shot right over its back, hit a tree on the other side. I loaded another arrow, it come running right towards me. So a closer shot.
Yep.
Because
Yeah,
they didn't recognize the bow going off because it's
right.
fairly quiet. They recognized the arrow hitting a tree, and it
Yep.
went thud.
Yeah.
I heard it hit. I didn't
Yeah.
even look to the arrow because I knew it was going to be way up because that's on top of a hill. So I knew it was
Oh,
going to
sure.
be way up. The only way to get that arrow back was to try and screw in pegs to climb up to it. And it's like
Yeah.
arrow
Yep.
broadhead's not worth climbing up a tree like that.
Yep. Yep.
And who knows how far it was away. Didn't say
Yeah.
it was very far, but when you're on top of a hill, that's probably 20 feet up just to get the level where I'm at, and then up a little bit higher. So it was probably 30 feet up in the tree, and finding it
Sure.
would have been fun to even just find it.
Right. Yeah. Find it and then try to get it out without breaking
Yeah. Now at that point, you unscrew it and keep the arrow
it.
on
Right.
and
Right.
leave the broadhead. But you know, Muzzy's burying a tree is pretty good.
Yep. Yep. I shot my bear with a muzzy, and it was kind of a cool mount. So with their bait barrels, they kind of made like a little teepee with logs, to where the bears had to spend a little bit of time pulling those logs out of the way, hopefully to give the hunter an opportunity there. But um, he had pulled all the logs out. Well, one was laying on the other side of him when I shot, and the arrow passed through and actually stuck into one of the logs.
Oh,
And I was able to bring the log back with whatever, rules at the time with, traveling, and just couldn't have any bark on it and all that jazz. But I was able to bring the log home and incorporate it in the mount. So I was able to actually take the arrow that I shot him with and just thread it right back onto my broadhead in the log, and it's all part of the mount.
oh, that's good. Nice that you'll be able to bring it back. Like to take the bark off and
Yeah.
because that's where your bugs are going to hide it, in between the bark and the log.
Right. Yeah, we had to do a lot of verifying on that to make sure that everything was okay bringing it back. But
Yeah, you don't want to get to the board and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you can't have this.
yeah,
Yeah, we're
yeah,
going to detain you for 12 hours while we figure out why you're trying to bring this log back.
right, right, yeah. So where at in Nebraska are you?
I'm between Omaha and Lincoln.
Okay.
A little
Only reason
bitty,
what's that?
little bitty village in between them.
Okay. The only reason I was asking, we actually drew antelope tag and a mule deer tag for Nebraska this year. So
You're going to be out a little bit further west.
yeah, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, if you're coming through, give me a holler. Maybe we'll meet up or something for lunch or dinner when you're coming through. Of
Yeah, yeah.
course, depends on when you come through.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it'll be about the second week of September is what we're looking at, but depends on which way we travel through there. But
Yeah, because you're probably most likely coming from we say Wisconsin, right?
hmm
Yeah, you'll be
yep.
coming down 80, so you're gonna go right past me here,
Okay.
not too far away. Whereabouts is your hunt at?
So we actually drew statewide antelope tags, and then I purchased a statewide archery tag for mule deer. So I think we're gonna head fairly northwest. I know there's a couple of restrictions up in that area, but we're still in the works of planning all that out.
Well, that'd be good. A lot of open country out there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, mule deer, as you probably know, they don't pattern very well.
right, right. Yeah, we'll see if we can get it happen, get it done out there and see what happens. But
Yeah, we'll have to have you back on. You can talk about the hunt when you get done.
yeah,
Yeah, that'd be fun. Listen to your stories about the hunt.
yep. Yeah, no, I'm excited. Like I said, my only other two out of state hunts were the bear hunt up in Canada and then antelope in Wyoming. I guess I kind of started with some of that stuff a little late, but I mean I had kids pretty young, so we're uh we're getting back into it now.
Well, it's nice now. Your kids are getting old enough they can go with you.
Yeah, yep.
That's always nice when you can go out with your kids and do some hunting and
Yeah,
or fishing or whatever you want to do. As long as you spend it with the
right.
kids is always good. And my
Yep,
kids are all grown now, so uh, it's they're not living at home. They haven't lived at home for many years, but it's nice when you can get out with them and spend some time out there with them in out in the wilds.
right. Yep, getting them outdoors. Keep them out of trouble.
Yeah. Well, now they're adults. They have to keep themselves out of trouble.
Right, right.
I can't help them too much with that. Yeah, my oldest is he does fences. He puts in,
Okay.
wood fences, chain link fences. He does landscaping uh, and so he may get in doing some decks and mowing lawns, and you don't do a lot of lawns because it makes more money putting in fences, but that's his main
Right.
thing. It's doing fences. So he does pretty good at that. And my youngest is going to school to be an electrician.
Okay.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
I'm an electrical engineer, so that's kind of nice that it's falling in somewhat similar field.
Right, right.
But he's having fun, learning a lot of hours. But
Yeah.
what electricians do, they put in a lot of hours. Of
Yep.
course, so does guys putting in fences,
No,
and
yeah.
that's hard work too. Digging on. He's got all the equipment, for digging the holes. He don't have to dig them by hand anymore. He
Right.
he started out digging them by hand. Those
Yeah.
little things you stab in and pull it out, and
No.
yeah, yeah. Now he's got a bobcat that has a auger that just Dale
Yep.
Jurgen going out and has got his footings.
Yep. Making easy work.
Yeah. So you're full time at the shop then? Is that what you're doing then?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I was a mechanic welder on semi tankers before I came to the shop. Like I said, we were just doing it kind of part time and stuff, and then as I started chasing, the newfound dream of the professional archery, it kind of made sense, and making archery my everyday life was pretty easy transition. It's something that I love doing, and I love helping people. So, it was an easy transition.
Yeah, it sounds like where you have your own shop and you're able to, play with all the new gear.
Yep.
That's kind of the fun part. It's like, okay, this new one comes in, I get to try this new one and shoot it for a while
Yep.
and like it and then go on and we get it all set up and then it's like ready for the next year and sell off the old one and get a new one.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. You get Christmas several times a year.
Yeah. Yeah, you get to try the new ones and new things come out and try them. And that was always kind of the fun thing is when you get something new, you order them in and then you get to try it out and see
Yep.
what it's like, set them up. And, there's always new concepts coming out and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And sometimes they
Right.
fit you and sometimes they don't.
Yep.
I've had some where it's like, oh, this is cool. I want to shoot this bow. Couldn't get it set up. I just never felt right. Like,
Yeah.
okay, it felt great for somebody else.
Yep. Yep. And that's the thing. I mean, there's really no right or wrong, in the world of archery. I mean, there's, I guess, what we could consider a textbook, style of shooting, but everybody's just got a little different style.
Yeah. Now remind everybody what the name of your shop was.
It's DATS Archery. It's DADTZ.
Okay. Just because we've been talking about it, I want to make sure that uh, they can find it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That was DATZ,
DADTZ.
DADTZ.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we'll put a link in the description so they make it easy for them to find it.
Awesome.
So, what else would you have for like beginners? Walk us through. Somebody comes into your shop, never shot a bow before. What would what would be your process to go through to help them get started?
Well, I suppose, like you said, the eye dominance thing is number one. Most people that we see coming in, already have an idea of what eye is more dominant, whether it be through rifle shooting or pistol shooting or something like that, or just through other things, even other sports. But get them kind of fitted into a good draw length. Let them handle a couple different bows and just kind of see what they like what they like weight wise or feel wise in the grip, and then getting that draw length set. Um, and really just, I won't, like I said, I just set up a throw a whisker biscuit on there, just so they have something on there that they can shoot, and really dial in that form and get the proper feel, and then try a couple different bows out, in the same setup, um, just so they can feel the difference between them and just kind of see what their preference is, and kind of go from there. But really, I mean, I'm a big proponent on form, um, and the rest of it, I feel like we can work on, different mechanics and stuff like that. But
Yeah, that's kind of the standard way, we should do it is take them in, figure out what they is, what's their needs. You know, I know when the Hunger Games first come out, we had a lot of people come in. It's like, well, I want a bow.
yeah,
They're like, why, then you got to figure out, okay, is it a compound? Is it a recurve? Longbow? What is it they're looking for? And,
Right.
then there was a lot of them looking in for the recurves because, they liked the Hunger Games, and the lady that played Katniss was actually taught by an Olympic archer, and you can see it in her form.
Yep.
So you could tell that she was, those of us that know about that, it's like, okay, she was taught by an Olympic archer, or she was an Olympic archer. And sure enough, she
Yeah.
was taught by an Olympic archer on how to shoot. And, so what is it you want to do with it? Some of the questions
Yep.
as, you know,
Right.
what's interests you about it? You want to hunt with it. You want to just shoot in your backyard. You want to start, competing in it. You want to do 3Ds, you want to do, target, you want to do Olympic archery, because it all depends on what bow we were going to recommend is what do you want to do with it?
Right.
And a lot of them, well, I just want to shoot a bow. Well, okay, here, shoot this one, give them a kid's one. It's like, well, no, I don't want that one. Okay, now what is it you're looking for?
Right.
Sometimes you have to kind of, it's like, oh, well, here's a kid's 20 pound, you know, compound, or the little toy looking ones.
Yep.
I was like, well, here you go. Well, I don't want that. Like, then you can get them talking about, okay, what is it they're looking for? Because sometimes they don't know, because they don't know what questions to ask. So,
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's a big one too. Even not just the bow, but as far as what kind of site we're going to set you up with, or what kind of rest we're going to put on there. Based on if you are hunting, what style of hunting or what kind of hunting are you doing? Are
right.
you one that's going to want to take a little bit longer shots, or are you just looking to keep it simple and just keep a normal fixed pin sight on there, or are you looking for a movable sight, something that you can dial out? And the other thing too with the multi pins versus the single pin, a lot of people that I see are, they see all those pins and then they get screwed up. And well, I think I used this pin, when I shot. Well, if you're getting confused on your pins, maybe we should go to a single pin and
Yeah.
just get one focal point.
And then when you do that, set it up, set it for 20 yards, because most of your shots going to be at that range. If they're
Right.
longer than that, you're going to have time to readjust your sight. Same thing in more shooting a rifle, the scope on it. Always set it to lowest power,
Right.
because if it's a long shot, you got time to crank it up.
Yep.
You don't have time to crank it down on the close shots. So
Nope.
it's the same thing. It's like, let's set it for 20. Now if they come in at 5 yards, yeah, that 20-yard pin's not even close. But
Right. Right.
that's a whole different story. We've talked about that several times on here. But
Yeah.
see those short shots, and try the longer shots, but don't try and say, okay, I've just started shooting, I want to go shoot 100 yards. So how many arrows do you want to have with you before you hit the target?
Right.
Yeah, a dozen. You might need a couple dozen to hit the target once if you're starting out at 100 yards.
Yeah. Right.
Start
Right.
at 20 and work your way back. And that's always the nice thing is there's so many options.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's something for everybody. You know, it's just really what you want to get into and how far you want to take it.
Yeah. Well, and archery is still some militaries still use archery.
Really? I didn't
Yeah.
even know that.
Yeah, there is a few that do it because of the terrain they're in.
Sure.
And in fact, the United States had a division that was archery back, I think, in the 60s. I forget now. I actually did a podcast on this a long time ago, but so I did some research on it. And one of the things they did was to test the penetration. They took a cardboard box, probably about a foot thick, and put two dividers in it. So you got about 4 inches in, 8 inches in, and then all the way through. And they shot it with a 45, which was the standard sidearm. It penetrated the box, but never penetrated the first cardboard separation. Then they shot it with an M1, which is a 30-06.
No.
It penetrated the first one, stopped in the second one. Then they shot it with a broadhead, it went all the way through the box, and it was filled with I think I filled it with sand.
Sure.
It went through 12 inches of sand and stuck out the other side.
Yeah.
And that's the power of archery, and it's
Yeah.
quiet.
Yes.
You can sneak in and take that shot, and you know they're not going to hear it come. They're going to see the arrow, but who knows by the
Right.
time who knows which direction it come from.
Right.
And so that's uh, you know nowadays the only ones that are going to use it are those that are in kind of really remote areas. A lot of terrain that's really not conducive to shooting guns.
Sure.
But yeah, that was interesting. And even with arrows, your bulletproof vests does not stop an arrow.
No.
Now if they
No.
have a trauma plate and a steel plate in there, it'll stop it on the steel plate. But if they don't have that plate in there, it's going to go right through that vest.
Yep.
Because you got to remember, Kevlar, how do they make it? They cut it with scissors and they sew it.
Yep.
What is a broadhead? It's basically scissors
Right.
or a needle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it's interesting, some of the stories that you can hear in the history. And archery's 65,000 years old. They
Yeah.
found evidence, from they dated it to be 65,000 years ago. And that's it's been around for a long time.
Yeah. That's impressive.
It's kind of interesting, when you look at the history of different weapons, or even different anything. As how long has it been around?
Yeah.
From taking the stones and carving out your broadheads and your arrowheads. And those can be really sharp.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I thought it would be pretty cool to learn some of that stuff, but even just getting into, like, I've recently gotten into traditional archery, and just to kind of create a new challenge for myself. And yeah, the more that I start getting into some of that, it's like, man, I'd almost prefer to just hand make some of this stuff and just make it, that much more meaningful. But
Yeah. Not someplace you have to look, you may or may not be able to hunt with them.
sure.
I think last time I looked in Nebraska, it's been many, many years though, that you couldn't hunt with a broadhead made out of a stone.
Oh, sure.
So I don't know, it might be, there for a while you couldn't, when you're out bow hunting, you couldn't have any kind of firearm on you.
Yeah.
And last year or the year before, I asked that game warden, and like, you know, sometimes you need it for protection. He says, well, as long as it's less than a 6-inch barrel or 5-inch barrel, you can carry a handgun along with you.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool, because there's times when you're out there and you might need it,
Oh, yeah.
for other things other than hunting.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah. No,
And what I normally carry isn't that long of a barrel anyway. So
right. Yeah. No, I recently started making sure that I always have a sidearm on me. I did have one encounter with a mountain lion that it was a little too close for comfort.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
and
that
that arrow don't stop them quick enough.
no, especially not at 10 o'clock at night when you're tracking a deer.
Yeah,
That's not conducive for looking through a sight.
no. And here in Nebraska, we have mountain lions here too.
Yeah,
I've seen a couple of them.
according to our DNR, we don't have them, but we've seen a few of them around.
Well, Nebraska was that way too for a while. They'd say, no, we don't have any. We don't have any. And then on one of the highways, one got hit and killed. It's like, okay, they had to admit there was some. And
You know,
and Mike and I were heading home from hunting one time, and here's this one run right across the road. It was not a big one, it was a
yeah,
young one. So that meant there had to be at least one breeding couple.
right, right.
And then the place was hunting. we're at the top of the hill, down at the bottom of the hill on one of the big round hay bales. It's like, okay, there's one sitting up there, and it wasn't too far from the house.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's the only thing, because coyotes don't climb up on round bales like that.
No.
No, they just don't climb up there on them, because there was no way other than jumping up to the top of the bale to get up there.
Yeah.
And we
Well,
all
they'll
know what coyotes look like.
right, right. Yeah.
And like I said, you're out at night, you're trying to blood trail them, and there are some of the animals that are going to be following that same blood trail.
Yeah. And
You
that,
know, and-
yeah, well, I got pretty lucky on that one, I think, but and really the only reason that I seen it, I had called my dad to see if he could come out and help me, track this doe. And um, I had blood, but it was just, I wasn't sure about the shot. I knew it was a little bit far forward, and so I gave her some time and went back out there. And um, he couldn't find me, and it was thick enough. It was early enough in the season that the canopy was still really thick. And I was on the phone with him, and he goes, "Well, wave your flashlight up in the treetops, and I'll see if I can see the light, and I'll just walk your way." And I was waving my flashlight, and I just so happened to catch a pair of eyes in the tree, and I could just see the silhouette, and I seen the tail come wrapping around the tree trunk. And I said, "Well, either you need to find me or I need to find you, because I got to get out of this spot."
yeah, somebody's watching you from above.
All right.
Yeah, that would be a little bit, you know, just seeing eyes and it could be, like a raccoon or something. But when you see a
Well,
big
and
tail, that's not a
yeah,
raccoon.
no, no, and those eyes were, all of 5, 6 inches apart, and I said, "Well, that's no raccoon. That's
No, no,
that's a
the eyes are
big
much
cat."
closer.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that they say there's no mountain lions there, but yet you run across one.
right, right. And we've had a few encounters, within, I would say a half-hour driving distance of here, that people have had trail camera pictures and stuff of them. So actually, I think there was a case. I don't know if it was this last season or the season before. I think it was this last season. Um, there was a hunter a few hours north of us, and he actually shot one in self-defense, that was coming at him. And that was, they did their investigation and everything and ruled it as self-defense. But, it's, how can you tell me that there's none of these here, and I almost got attacked? And,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, you can kind of see if the shot comes from the front, they're coming after you.
right, right.
A sideways shot or a backward shot is, okay, they're running away, or they're walking sideways. But
Right.
yeah, when the shot goes in from the front, it's definitely a self-defense one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something, a lot of, I never worried about it before. My guy was hunting with, even before I think it wasn't legal, or we didn't even know. He always carried a sidearm with him, and yeah, so I never did. I says, Mike, I just need to run faster than you.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
got
Well,
the gun.
right, right.
But we never come, as close as you did to seeing one like that. It's one was driving, the other one was at the top of the hill. So it didn't even, I don't think it even knew we was there, because it was just sitting on top of the bale, probably
Sure.
looking for some other small animal or something to pounce on and attack. But
Yep.
yeah, the farmer there, he says, yeah, back in the 60s, they've seen, you know, footprints in the dirt and stuff from them. It's like, well, they've been there since the 60s. It's just nobody's seen them because they had plenty of habitat.
Right.
Well, now as they're moving in and taking over the habitat, they're going to be out and around where you can see them.
Yep. Yep.
When you don't have any houses around for miles, chances of being seen are slim.
Right.
Well, let's see. We've been on here for about an hour and a half now, I think. So, um, what would you recommend somebody that's thinking about getting into archery? What would you
I,
recommend to them?
I'd say get into your pro shop, your local pro shop, and ask for help, and kind of like we talked about, and you kind of have an idea, of what you're looking for, and maybe you don't, but that's what the pro shop's there for. Just get in there and give it a go. I wouldn't hesitate. Archery changed my life in a lot of ways. And it's all been for the better. It's a form of therapy, and if nothing else, and it's an avenue for a lot of adventures, a lot of new stuff. So I wouldn't hesitate. I would just get in and do it.
Yeah. So that, let's say you have somebody that's been shooting for a few years and looking at upgrading to a better bow. What would you recommend they do?
I mean, I would say get in and shoot, shoot the new stuff, see what fits you better. Because if you're that intermediate, or getting into that upper level of archery, your form should be there, and you should know your capabilities, to an extent, and just see what's going to sing to you, what's going to fit you a little bit better. Um, yeah, I don't, a lot of that, like I said, a lot of it, go to your pro shop, and talk to them and see what you can get handled. I know there's plenty of YouTube videos out there too, if you're looking to extend your skill set. Um, that's how I learned, really, with what I know now, was a lot of videos, and just taking information from different people, and maybe have 5, 6 different people that you look at, but you can kind of pick one thing from this person and say, yep, I can do that, or that makes sense to me, but this portion doesn't. But what this guy over here said, that makes sense to me as well. So I can just kind of collaborate, and use all that information to kind of help you along.
Yeah. How important would you say a coach is to somebody that's trying to take it to the upper levels?
I would say it's really important. I was kind of self coached for a bit. Um, but and it can take you a long way, but a coach is going to be able to pinpoint those little things that you're missing. The one little struggle that you may have, or that little hump that you need to get over, a coach is going to help you get through that, um, and expand it. And I don't want to say shortcut, because I'm not a huge shortcut guy. I mean, I'd rather figure it out and fix the problem, and not have to deal with it. But I would say a coach is pretty important.
Yeah, and that's what, I've seen, over many, many years. You can figure it out maybe,
Right.
but how much time do you want to spend figuring it out? Well, you can go to a coach and you can figure it out, like you've done it and I've done. We, spend 45 minutes an hour and improve their group from 6 inches to 1 inch groups, or
Yeah.
2 inch group three. And you get into that X ring when you're lucky to even hit the white. It's just
Yeah.
a matter of a few minutes, by going to a coach. And you know, what the coaches cost is minimal compared to the time you're going to spend, and then the arrows you're going to lose, and
Right.
you know cut it down. And then you might get into, I taught a guy, he wanted a bow, he wanted a high-end bow to start with, his very first bow. I taught him how to shoot. 2 weeks after he shot his first arrow, he's got a Robin Hood already.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's awesome.
now, can I guarantee you're going to get a Robin Hood? Oh, of course not.
All right. Right.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you can't guarantee. I've gotten several of them. Uh, I've gotten two of them when I worked at Cabela's. One was on a customer's bow that I set a drop away on because he couldn't group with it. He wanted to drop away because he figured that was his problem, and I put it on there. Two shots, stuck two to the arrow. Then the other time was on a bow that we set up, uh, and I shot two arrows and stuck two together. And the manager comes in and says, "Oh, we got to pull them off there because everybody else is having trouble. They won't. They're having problems setting them up and all kinds of stuff." That I'm like, then it's like, here, I just did this. And then we had like 4 people we set it up for, and we're shooting 1-inch circles.
Right.
It's like, uh, it's just a matter of maybe it was hard to set up and we just knew how to do it, or maybe we got a good one and they didn't. Who knows? Because they wouldn't
Right.
let we had 2 more. They wouldn't let us set it up to see if it was the bow or it was the techs that were setting it up. And
Sure.
when you go to like a Bass Pro, Cabela's, Dick's, Shields, or any of those other chain stores, do you have somebody that knows how to set up a bow? Flip a coin. Heads
Right.
yes, tails no. Do you have somebody that knows how to teach you archery? Flip a coin. Heads yes, tails no. You
Right.
don't know. Go to a pro shop like yours or any other one that's their business is selling bows and setting up bows and teaching archery and all that. You're not guaranteed, but you're pretty good chance that you have somebody that is going to know what they're doing.
Right. Or
You
they
know,
know of somebody that can help.
right, right.
Good.
You know,
And and like you said too, like that little bit that it might cost you to get a coach for a bit, how much is it going to save you just from building bad habits? Those bad
right,
habits that take that much longer to get over, just from, whether it be, being stubborn or whatever, trying to be self-taught. I was there, you know, but yeah, you start building those bad habits and now you're, you know, outside of just spending the money on the equipment, or whatever, messing up equipment or, whatever the case may be. But those bad habits they can linger with you for a long time.
right. And that's why, you buy a bow from me, I'm including in shooting instruction.
Yep.
Because if I don't get your form right, I can't fit the bow to you.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's just like, well, order it online, have it come in and shoot it, however it
Right.
comes in. Yeah,
Right.
that's not going to work very well for anybody.
Yeah.
So I'm teaching how to shoot, and I teach back tension release. You first thing I'm teaching you back tension release. I'm not going through, well, do this, pull the tree, we'll fix you later. No, there is no
Right.
fixing you later. It's fix, do it correctly now. And now you're going to be better off in the long run because now I don't have to try and break a habit. Like you said, it's hard to
Yep.
break a habit. And sometimes the only way to break the habit is quit shooting your bow for 6 months.
Yeah.
So you forget what you was doing wrong
Yep. And
and
that
then pick
actually,
it back up.
yeah. Yeah. And I actually, a friend of mine and actually one of our shop shooters, we just went through that. He was struggling something fierce, and really I think it was on the release, it's just, he couldn't get that. There was just some sort of a disconnect between his mind and his hand, and he'd start to focus on it and then everything, would just fall apart. And it was crippling. I mean, he was just not enjoying it. He hated shooting his bow, but he felt like he had to. And I said, hey, put it down. Just put it down, walk away from it, and that's when actually he pulled out a longbow, and I pulled out the recurve, and I said, listen, if this is what it takes, I need to shoot, recurves and longbows with you for a little bit, or we just need to take a break, whatever. And he actually took a couple months off, and we got him to pull his bow back out, and that first shot was right in the middle. It was just, he forgot what he was doing before. He wasn't overthinking, and he was able to execute good shots again.
Yeah, sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I love archery, and I'd never want to step away from my bow for 4 to 6 months. But if that's what it takes to enjoy it again, then you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Well, like in that case, picked up a completely different bow.
Yeah.
Longbows and recurves are not compounds.
Right.
You shoot them differently.
Yep.
Different, for me, a different mental attitude when I pick up a recurve. So I don't have any longbows, I just have a recurve. When I pick a recurve, my whole mindset is completely different. I'm
Yeah.
not looking for peep sights. I'm not looking, all this other stuff. I use anchor point. I hold it and draw it the same as I do my compound because my arm length is the same.
Sure.
Um, so I don't use an arm guard because I grip it the same way I do a compound, off the
Yep.
side so I don't hit my arm, and I drop back to half inch shorter than my draw length because then, like you was talking about earlier, that big heavy coat, I don't hit my
Yeah.
heavy coat because I'm 29 instead of 29 and a half for my real draw length. And unlike when I first got my first compound bow, um, I drew it back and it was one of those a 32-inch draw length, and I didn't know any better. And she said, "How's that feel?" This is at a shop. Oh, okay. I didn't know what I didn't know. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so I thought I was 32-inch draw length. And then when that one broke, I got another one. It's like, I need 32-inch draw length. And then um, I had, my first PSE, and I went down to the shooters NFA shooter school where I learned how to use back tension as well as become an instructor. Um, go in and they measured everybody's draw length and they said, I'm 29 and a half. My bow set at 32. This is a Friday night. And they said Saturday night was the second session and Sunday night was the third session. So Saturday night, my bow had to be 29 and a half inches draw length, or there's no reason for me to even tend. So Saturday, I'm running around trying to get, shorter strings and longer cables and get them all set up to get it down to the 29 and a half. And I was like, oh man, this feels short. This feels short. You know what I mean? We go through all the shooting, feels short, feels short. Now I shoot 29,
Yeah.
because it's like, okay, I paid all this money. Back
Yep.
then it was like $250, and this
Yeah.
was in 95. So that was, now today's money, that'd probably be $1,000 or better,
Right.
for that 3-night course of about 2 hours each night. And then I shortened it up another half inch, and now I don't hit my sleeve even in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And so I shoot the same. It's just anchor point's a little different,
Yep.
because I don't have a release in my hand.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's yeah, now you say that about the draw length. I mean, I had a guy come in, um, and yeah, he was set up, he'd been shooting that way for years. And he's about my size, right around 6 foot. And I said, well, I'm a 29, and a quarter ish, comfortably in my draw length. And he came in and I said, well, what, 29, just kind of giving him a rough guess. And he's like, no, I shoot at 27. And I said, okay.
27.
I said, well, that sounds a little short. I mean, your arms are just as long as mine. Like, and I set him up into a 29-inch bow, and he's like, oh, I don't know about this. This feels way too long. But he had a crazy bend in his arm with his other one. And it took me, a good week of working with him, but we finally got him properly fitted and to where he was comfortable with it. And his scores skyrocketed, tremendously.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's generally everybody's too long. And
Yeah.
in that case it's too short. But um, yeah, I know one lady that she just shot better and liked it better a little shorter. So she had more bend in her arm. Uh, Too much bend in it for me, it's too hard to put any pressure on it because your arm is too much bent. But
Yeah.
that's what she
Inconsistent
liked.
pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. But you don't want it locked out. Which a lot of them they teach lock the arm out. So it's locked
Yep.
out. Well, the problem with that is the arm floats
Right.
there's nothing to push. And the way I teach, when you shoot, that hand should point to your target. When
Yep.
you're done, it should point to your target. If it doesn't, you're doing something wrong. And if
Yep.
your arm is locked out, it just floats. It can't extend to the target because unless you start pushing up on your shoulder. From locking your arm out, it pushes the shoulder up. Then if the
Yep.
shoulder pushed up, you already had shoulder problems. You got to keep it you got to keep it bent so it pushes all the way through the joints, not on the tendons.
Right.
And I had a physical therapist on one time. Oh, geez, probably almost 3 years ago now. But back in one of my early podcasts, where he talked about shoulder injuries and how to recover from it, and there's a lot of probably the same things that you went over, with the therapist you were working with, getting that down so so your tendon's not there. And I always look at the shoulders because a lot of people try to push them shoulders up like shrugging your
Hmm.
shoulders up. Well, not only that puts strain on your neck, but also puts strain on your shoulders, the tendons and the muscles. You want the joints to hold it.
Right. Yeah, and you get too tight in there, and then the headaches start to come, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I've done that. I went through, the high risk one where instead of being down, your wrist is up. And, that was, I abandoned that really quick. I think only shot that way for 2, 3 times out. And it's like, yeah, I don't like it. I just didn't like it. It didn't feel comfortable. And so then
right,
I used, the lower one. And, you know, now I know, better, why it works better.
right.
you know, doing martial arts the same. It's like there's nothing that in my training says this should do any good, and it didn't.
Yep,
Because I had a couple of guys, I was learning before I learned how to shoot. This is like early '90s or late '80s. All kinds of different stuff, and it's like, no, I don't like this. Some of the guys are doing it, and but you're not even you don't even have good contact with the bow. It just kind of float too much. And
yep,
the other thing I've seen a lot of them do is they'll draw back with their wrist strap and put their thumb behind their neck.
yep,
It's like, okay, not a, I mean, just hurts, just doing that. Not only is it not consistent, but you're on the soft part of your neck and it's moving, it's not consistent. Uh,
yeah,
yeah. And then, wintertime, are you going to go underneath your headgear to try and get back there? No, that thing just
right.
go back on the now it's back further. It's not changing your draw length. And no, me, I
Yep,
like the punching knuckle right in that pocket behind the jawbone and the ear. There's a little
yep,
pocket back there, a little pressure point back there, but put that right in there, bone on bone. You don't have to worry about it.
yep,
Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff out there and a lot of things I've done. And one of the things that I've talked to several times, I had a string that has a loop wraps around my thumb. That's my drawing. So I can use my release. I can put pressure on that. Now it's not quite the same as down on here,
yep,
on where he starts pushing, but it's on the thumb. So I can still push forward with it. And when I shoot and practice with that, that string should jump straight to the target I'm aiming at. If it doesn't, my form is off.
yep,
And I used to carry one with me in my 3D rig, and it's like something's not feeling right. I'd start shooting that until I got the technique back. But it's
yeah,
just all the little bitty things that you can do to make sure it's all there. And you know my hand doesn't come flying back like you see a lot of them flying back. For me, it just comes back. uh
yep,
I seen I watched some. It's like when I was learning this, they would shoot arrow in the target, all of a sudden then the hand would come back.
yep,
Well, my hand's supposed to come back. No, it should naturally do something. you know
right. And,
it's
yep,
like, oh, okay. No, my hand's got to come back. It's a
yep.
thought.
I see a lot of that too, because I mean, depending on what I'm shooting, whether I'm shooting a 2 finger or a 3 finger, release, I shoot primarily hinges. And if I'm shooting a 2 finger, the amount of pressure that I'm pulling with, my hand, once it hits that stopping point, and my hand will fly over my elbow, basically, like everything's coming back in line. Um, but it almost seems exaggerated, but it's just that much pressure, and I shoot with a pretty relaxed hand, and they I get a few guys that are, oh, mine's doing just what yours is doing, so I'm doing something right. But you watch them and they'll actually punch the trigger and then throw their fist back
Yeah.
like they're,
Yeah.
it, yeah,
I got to tell you a story when I was down at PSC, not their factory. Because when you become a PSC dealer, you can go down, spend a week down there and learn how
sure,
to, work on bows and everything else. Well, I was
sure.
talking to one of the guys that shoots basically their gorilla squad. We shoot 90 pounds.
Oh yeah,
And when you're shooting 90 pounds, that bow goes off, that hand comes flying back.
oh yeah,
So he was telling me he was up there shooting, and the guy was watching. He didn't care. The guy was back behind him watching. Didn't really wasn't really paying attention to him because so what if he's watching him? Well, one time he got a little too close, smacked him in the head,
Yep.
and and at night that hand is coming back with some force, and
Yeah.
boom, smacked him. He got a little too close. So don't stand behind somebody that's shooting if you
No.
don't know what's going to happen, and
Yep.
don't get that close to them.
Yep.
And that's even with when I'm helping somebody, they got him, it's like, okay, he's finger out the trigger. I'll walk by them. I'll actually put their hand on their elbow as I'm walking to get from the front to the back. I'll put my
Yep.
hand on the elbow as I'm
Yep.
walking around, because if it goes off, I have something to help protect me from getting smacked.
Yep.
Because I don't want to get hit. And
Yep.
you straighten them out and look at them, and that's quite a bit. When you're teaching somebody how to shoot a bow, you're going to be touching them.
Oh yeah.
And that's just part of, I can tell you what to do 100 times. If you're pushing the hip, I can tell you 100 times can do it. But if I go, don't, put on one side, other side, and straighten out, it's like, oh, that's what you've
Yep.
been telling me to do. Don't understand. The shoulder's up. Tap on the shoulder. Relax the hand. Tap. You touch the hand. It's like, okay, relax the hand, relax the shoulder. And all this stuff. Because that just kind of reinforces. Okay, relax the shoulder. It's like, oh, okay. You feel it and go from there. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Get that, the bone on bone contact is, that's important stability. That was my biggest issue, is that I actually had a problem with the head of my humerus was actually popping out of the socket. And so I had no stability in my shoulder when I was shooting, and I could still shoot okay. But if I shot like a 5 spot round, 60 arrow round, I would have a screaming headache for about 2 weeks, because my trap was the only thing holding the bow up, and it would just tense up all the way up through the backside of my neck, and that was a nightmare.
So what'd you do to fix that?
So that's where I worked with that physical therapist. I'll actually give him a shout out. It's Greg Renfro with Dedicated Online Training. Um, so what we worked on, getting the head of that humerus pop back in, and then strengthening all the stabilizer muscles around it, um, to keep it in the socket, and just building up that strength around it. So I think what the initial injury is, I got hurt at work. I had a subframe off the front of a semi tanker that actually had swung down, and it fractured the head of my humerus. And I don't think I ever, it was probably my doing. I didn't give it the time needed to properly heal, because I wanted to shoot my bow, and it just created one problem after the next. And just so happened to be, I think, my second year as a pro, that it was really a problem. And when you're spending that much money on entry fees, it's kind of disheartening to know that you can't perform at
Yeah.
peak performance. I knew something needed to be done.
Yeah, I had the same problem with not letting it heal before it goes on. I had a triple bypass, and 12 weeks to heal. Well, 10 weeks in, I'm back in having plates put in because the bone had never healed, because I wasn't hurting or nothing. So I move around just constantly, it's constantly moving. And so now I got
Sure.
plates in there, and I think I'm starting week 5 now. So it hasn't been moving around. So um, this time I'm, taking easy. I'm not even trying to go back to work for, you know, probably 8 weeks. Make sure it
Sure.
gets everything going. I put off the rehab. I'm gonna put it off for 6 weeks, because then restrictions go from 10 pounds to 25 pounds. So I'm just, got to take the time. And they just stitch it together with stainless steel wire, and that works for 99% of the people. Worked for my brother. He had one. It worked just fine for him, but I don't sit around as much as he does. So, um,
Sure.
yeah. So I kind of, I know what you mean here. You got to let them heal, and it's
Yeah.
kind of the same problem. You had a problem. I had a problem, because we just didn't let him heal. Because
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I'm bored. It's
Yeah.
that's the nice about this. I got more time to do podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep you
Which is
distracted.
fun. I can talk about archery even though I can't even lift my bow right now, because it's
Yeah.
weighs too much. So. I have to get back into that here in well, probably another 6 or 7 weeks before I can even think about trying to work up to being able to pull it.
Sure, sure.
Even though I got it cranked down to 60, um, as low as it'll go.
Okay.
Still, it's a little. I got an older bow. I got 2001 PSE and a 2003 PSE, and they're all at 70 pounds. I go from 60 to 70. Back then, 10-pound limit was it. 60-pound lambs go to 6, 70 will go down to 60 and
Yep.
60 down to 50 and whatnot. Now they've got such a range,
Yeah.
from 18 to 70 on some of them.
Right.
Of course, depends on the draw length goes up, the minimum goes up as well, but
Yeah. And
a lot of them. But
most of the flagships now, I think, are still around that 10-pound range, but a lot of those grow with you, or those budget bows have a wide range.
yeah, well, and if I'm looking for another bow, I'm not looking for one that goes a long range. I'm
Right.
looking at one that fits me now. I always shot better at 70 than I did at 60, so I'm looking for 70-pound lambs. Um, because that's where I'm going to be the most efficient at them. Now, as I
Sure.
get older, I might have to go down to 60, especially down until I get built back up. But
Yeah.
I just like shooting the 70.
Yeah.
It's plenty of power. I didn't have to worry about it. I've sent that muzzy through bones and it didn't even slow it down. And even at one time before I had draw length right, I hit my arm. It was the winter time. I hit my coat and it sent that muzzy through the back leg. It shattered the back leg in three pieces. Of course, caught an artery too, and back there in the leg, and I didn't go very far because didn't have a bone to walk on.
Right.
Two
Right.
front legs and one back leg, they don't move very well.
No.
So yeah, it's uh I like shooting the higher weight, not
Yeah.
really high, but my first year was at 52 pounds.
Yeah.
And it took me quite a while to get up to uh, 59, and then 60 was tough, and then getting up to 62 was tough. Then once I got to 62, then it seemed to just it didn't take long to get up to 70, but getting up to 62 pounds from 52 was tough.
Yeah.
You had to build and not shooting correctly either.
Right.
Back then
Well,
they didn't teach that back tension then.
right. Well, and pulling 60 pounds then, I would say it's probably pretty close to pulling 80 pounds now, with the technology they have in the
Oh
cams and
yeah.
everything.
Well, and they didn't have the high let off. Most of
Right.
them were 60% let off on
Yep.
some of the older bows, and then 80%. When they get 80%, man, they like the Pope and Youngs, they had to put an asterisk by it. It's they shot with an 80% let off.
Yep.
I don't know if they do that anymore now because most all the bows have 80% let off.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 80 to 90 seems pretty common.
Yeah, and I think that's why I shot better at 70 instead of 60, because you know too much let off. I didn't force me to lock into my form.
Right.
That extra weight, the extra 2 more pounds, I guess it is, with an
Yeah.
80% let off, forced me to put a little bit more pressure on locking into my form. It was too soft. It just didn't, for me, it just didn't seem like I was consistent. Now
Yeah.
shooting 300 rounds at 70, got a little bit tough towards the end. But it's weird. Every time I'd
Sure.
shoot one, I did better in the second half than I did the first half.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, hey, go
It feels
figure.
like you're shooting worse, but yeah, you're scoring better.
'Cause I didn't shoot a lot of 300 rounds, so I just did mostly shot the five spots for develop my skill.
Sure.
For me, I wasn't too interested in doing the target stuff with the spots. Yeah, I do the 3D because it's more like hunting.
Yep. Yep.
And that's what
Yeah,
I use the spots to develop my skill, and I use the 3Ds to develop, judging yardage. Um, the shot placement on a 3D target is not the same as on a live animal
right.
because we're going for those rings. And if you go for those rings, you're up in a tree. Yeah, you got a bottom exit and don't have much of a blood trail.
Yep. Yep.
So, any parting thoughts here, or we
Oh,
get out of here?
I don't know. Get a bow in your hand, get out there and shoot. About the best advice I can give anybody, I guess. Just get out and shoot.
Yeah, well, that's good advice because there's a lot to shooting a bow, more than just pulling it back and shooting, because you have to think about all kinds of things and clear your mind, and that's what's nice about it. Can't be upset shooting a bow. They just don't
Right,
go
right,
together very well. You got to
right.
relax and think about
Yeah,
where you want the arrow to go.
right. Yeah. Allow it to be your therapy. I guess
Yeah,
that's the mental state I find most people got to be in. You just got to allow it to happen.
yeah, that you do. Well, it's been great talking with you today,
Yeah,
and all the best in your hunts. And when you come out here to Nebraska, shoot, let's, if it works out, get a hold of me, and we'll meet up for something on the way, and take a break when you get here to the Lincoln area and or Omaha area, and I'll meet you there and chat. And otherwise, let's get back on another call after your hunt. I'd like to hear about it,
sure.
and I'm sure our other listeners would like to hear about it as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I always like to listen to hunting stories.
Yep.
Yeah,
What it's all about.
yeah, yeah. Hunting stories, or those that shoot target, they got some pretty cool stories too. So,
Yeah, oh,
hey,
yeah, yeah,
anytime you shoot a bow, whether it's your first time, if any of my listeners, hey, if you're just starting out, hey, let's get on here and let's talk about archery. What it is to start. Because we get a
yeah,
lot like you and I have been shooting for decades. I started shooting in the '60s. You know,
sure.
6 decades ago.
Yeah,
What was it like starting out? I don't remember too much because it was so long ago. Um,
right.
but hey, talk to the person that's like, hey, they're getting ready to get their first bow. Hey, let's talk about it. It's see what it is that's got you excited about it, and that all helps all of us out, because when you hear somebody's how excited they are, it kind of gets you excited as well.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, remember at the Facebook group Arch Talk 101, you can watch the video there. You can also watch the video on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself. You can go out to Spotify or any place else that has podcasts. You should go get it there, as well as on audible.com. Go out there, it's there as well. Just listen to it. If you have any comments or any questions, get a hold of us. We'll leave a link to get a hold of Dalton on here. We'll leave a link to his Facebook page and whatnot. We'll leave some links to the other stuff we talked about in here as well, that make it easier for you to get a hold of us and anything we talked about. So we'll see you on the next one. My name is Roy Canterbury. I've been host today on Arch Talk 101, and we'll catch you on the next one.